Thank you for listening on Anchor and Spotify, where all topics are welcomed. You can follow HB on Facebook at Uncomfortable In-House Convo with HB, where you can be in direct contact with HB and his followers. There will be Q&As, polls, and updates on future show topics and guest opportunities. If you want to be a featured sponsor, you can email HB at uncomfortableinhouseconvo@gmail.com. Now grab your glass and get ready for Uncomfortable In-House Conversations with HB, the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Uncomfortable In-House Conversations with HB. Today is going to be a great episode. I told y'all, at first it was going, I started out light. The more we go into these episodes, it's going to, go a little deep and a little darker, and it's going to get real uncomfortable. I have a special guest, Miss Terra Denise.
Hello, everyone.
She's a mental health advocate and also, in the ministry. Good friend of mine. I appreciate her coming in and, she can share her story a little bit. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Terra.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. Hey, everybody. I am Terra Denise. As he said, I am a mental health advocate. I'm not licensed. I'm not a professional. So if you want some advice, I might not be the best person to go to. However, I am very experienced in the area of mental health, and anytime there's an opportunity to speak on it or share my story, I do not mind. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I've lived down here in South Florida for 9 years, and I just appreciate the opportunity to come on here and just be Terra.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So first, I would like to say, everything in life, the way I look at it, I always say it's a maturation process. And, for me, life experience always trumps any kind of degrees, anything. One of my favorite celebrities, Mike Tyson, his one of his quotes is, "Everybody got a plan until you get punched in the mouth." And
That's real.
Yeah, and I love saying that because for me, I'm learning that we all go through trials and tribulations, maybe earlier in life, middle, I wasn't expecting myself to go through things that I went through, later on. So tell me a little bit about your experience and how you got to the point where you are now.
Well, I really like the way that you said that. When you say you don't necessarily need a degree, a lot of it is life experiences. That lets me know that this platform allows me to be free in telling my story. And even though, like I mentioned before, I may not be a healthcare professional, I do want to say that for some of us, it is extremely necessary to link up with or find a professional when it starts to get, beyond our control. But for me personally, a lot of it was just life experiences. Early on, I did need to seek out the help of a professional. Actually, I was forced to because I found myself in a mental health ward.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was much later. But leading up to that, I wasn't even aware that I had issues with mental health. Nobody talked to me about it. I wasn't aware of it. And so it's my lack of knowledge that led me to having to be in the situation where I was admitted.
Okay, so I want to pause right there because I want to soak this in. Because here's the thing. Also, what I'm learning, part of our not stupidity, but our ignorance. When we use the word or we think crazy, mental health, we picture the worst possible scenario. Somebody on the street begging for money, talking to himself. We look and we make that a thing. For me, I'm learning that a lot of that is a culture thing. Which I want to try to work on because it's a lot of things that we grew up learning, and not to, and also at the same time not to pick or blame my parents. I have to understand that we have to give them grace, because some of our parents, they didn't know until they know. Just like us, you know, you get into a situation and you just have to figure it out.
Right.
I learned too, one of the things that us, you know, in our culture, a lot of us, instead of going to get help, and there's nothing wrong with it, but again, when you have a heart problem, you go see a cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you know something wrong with your head, you know, you go see the doctor. They run an MRI. When you know different things for, you know, different spaces. When you visibly see something is going on with a person, mentally, emotional, and a lot of times it starts from traumatic experience. Every day, you know, I say, and instead of we going to, especially at the time we were growing up, instead of us saying, okay, maybe we need to go see a counselor, see somebody, we run to the church. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like let's just pray about it. And again, I'm gonna say I'm not. I believe in God and I believe in the Word.
Right.
But, you know, but I'm not holier than thou or anything. Sometimes, you know, some of my cousins, he picks something out times like, nigga, you know, why you act like this? You know, but for me, again, give me some time. It's my maturation process. But again, they say, you know, faith without works is dead.
Look at you.
So
Look at you.
Look, girl, I know a little soft. But no, man, so, you know, a lot of times you pray and we pray, and, you know, God might be like, okay, but what you doing? You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes, you know, I use the word Groundhog's Day. We keep doing the same thing until something changes. And, you know, sometimes it has to, and then too, unfortunately, you know, when we do get to a point to fix it, it might be the worst time possible, you know, in a situation. So, you know, at this time, walk me through whatever, you know, because I don't know, me and you ain't talk about it.
Right.
Was it trauma? How did it start? And when did you notice?
Well, you just said a lot of powerful things that can kind of become the lead into my story. I do want to highlight once again just how great I think that this platform is, because you are helping our community, you are helping our culture, typically we don't, or we're not readily told, or it's not readily available how we address the issue of mental health, because we just don't typically talk about it. However, when people know that they can come to a platform like this and, you know, discover some like-mindedness or discover some similarities of what they're going through, it helps the community. So for me, I really sometimes used to be embarrassed when I told my story, because on the outside looking in, honestly, people would be like, girl, what did you have to complain about? What did you have to go through any type of mental health issues when you had the household like you did? I have two wonderful parents. I will repeat that. I have two wonderful parents. My issue to not drag
two-parent household.
Two-parent household. Father that was actively involved in my life. Father that constantly affirmed me and my sisters. So and I'm not saying this to brag. I just have to make it very clear. Because too many times we hear that that's lacking, and that can sometimes be the precursor into why we have mental health challenges. I was the opposite. I didn't go through any of that. My issue, to hurry my story along, my issue was simply that I did not know how to be me. So I felt like I was trapped in a lifestyle that did not fit with what was going on in my brain. So the family that I came from was a very conservative church household. My household was so churchy. My dad was the pastor, the head lead pastor. And we went to church, when I tell you, every single day of the week. I'm not exaggerating. Every single day of a 7-day week, we were at church for something. And so I kind of was birthed into this lifestyle and mindset that I was supposed to operate like you do in the Christian lifestyle. And just because I was born into it, and just because it was getting spoon-fed to me, I still had these desires within that to me were far beyond just curiosity. this is who I am, and it doesn't line up with what I'm told to be or who I'm told to be.
So you thought you was going to hell after?
Well, it was actually a scary thing. Like, I can laugh at it now, but to be growing up and being told that being this way you're going to go to hell, and knowing, okay, well then I'll just pretend like I'm like everybody else so that I won't go to hell, it will cause you to have a nervous breakdown because you can only pretend for so long. So I grew up pretending to be who people expected me to be because of who my father was, without realizing at some point you have to be real with who you are. And then it got to a point where I didn't even know who I was. So I felt like I was losing my mind.
Okay, so again, interject. I love this. Everything what you said. So here's a little bit of my background. Exact same thing, but it's a little different. I grew up in a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, wow.
So here's the thing. Like you being the good girl, the good person, and you don't want to disappoint your parents and all of that.
I'm supposed to be the good
girl.
No.
Hold on. So here, with me, I was the total opposite. I was the rebellion. So literally, you know how, I make the joke, you know how the people come knock on your door?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I got an attitude, I'm aggravated. So one day, my mom got me up early in the morning. She's like, come on, we're going to go to field study. If you can't go, so this is what they do. You want to play basketball? You got to do this. Okay, fine. So I get up early in the morning, knock on the door. My mom, her friend, they're, hey, da-da-da-da-da. So this little girl, she came out from around and she was like, talking. So the little girl looked at me surprised. So my mom said, hey, how you doing? You know my son? So the little girl said, he can't be no Jehovah's Witness. You understand what I'm saying? So I said, so I'm looking crazy. My mama was like, well why not? So she right. So she looking at so she's looking at her mom like, mama, close the door. Like, so my mom was like so embarrassed. And so here's the thing about, again,
how old were you?
I was like 11.
Wow.
So here's the funny thing.
And the fact that you can recall that story so vividly, that left a mark in your mind. Like, you remember that. So
for me, here's the thing. I remember coming in, and as I'm coming in, my mom, and this goes for all people that go to church, no matter what denomination you are. Mm-hmm. When they, my thing is, I love spiritual people, but I hate church people. So we walking away, my mom grabbed my arm and was like, I said, beat your motherfucking ass. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at her like, again.
Making her look bad, but listen, and her witness.
But hold on, here's my thing. Mom, but we out here, you cursing at me. You understand? So everything that you're saying, I was like the total, like literally my mom, them used to be like, we can't celebrate. Okay, but can I get a gift though?
Yeah.
Or,
I get it.
Or like literally, I remember we would be sitting and they were having a thing, and they were one of the things about Jehovah's Witness, the mantra, they were saying like, yo, listen, it's certain things you shouldn't, with worldly people. They're you don't want to have sex before marriage, and I was like, I like sex. He's like, what? So, again, I didn't mean to interrupt. It was just funny.
It's the truth. They can't handle the truth.
So I think for me, I have always, one thing I can say, I hang my hat on. I always been me and comfortable with who I am. But I felt like moving forward now, things that happen, we'll go into all that, because the reason why I use trauma, that got me to a point where I realized that I was having mental health issues. And up until this point, the confident person that I was, because of that trauma, it's a lot of things now that bother me, that upset me. And like later on, after we, as you're talking, I am going to just tell you a story coincidentally that just happened to me today. And I was, just having this conversation, and I was just like, I was mad at myself because, like, why do you care? But we'll go into it later. But go ahead, finish up.
Yeah, so that's what was happening to me in terms of living a lifestyle that was expected of me, but not feeling the lifestyle in terms of this is who I am.
Okay.
So I never felt like Terra could be Terra. I never had a this is just who I am type of moment. I always felt like I had to fake the funk to make it. It just became embedded in my mind because I had done it for so long. So as I got into, I ended up going into the Air Force. I'm a military girl.
Thank you for your services.
I appreciate the acknowledgement. So once I got into the military, that was my first time on my own. Nobody making me go to church. Nobody making me, looking over my shoulder, making sure Tara's acting right. The city that I grew up in, Cincinnati, Ohio, my dad was pretty influential in that city. So there was very little places that I could go to that people didn't know that I was Dr. Bird's daughter. Gotcha. And Dr. Bird's name carried a lot of respect.
Okay.
So Tara could just be the typical 14, 15, 16-year-old girl getting in trouble. It came with a lot of weight because I'm just not the average 14, 15-year-old girl hanging out with her friends. I'm Dr. Bird's daughter, and I can't make Dr. Bird look bad.
Right.
So now I'm in the military. I'm 18 years old on my own, and that was a lot for me because I had to figure out, well, who am I now? Mm-hmm. Inside, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be, but I was still just so that person or this identity was so embedded in my mind that I still had to maintain a certain decorum because of who I was, which in essence, now that I look back on it, is kind of good, because it helped me still have that structure.
Right, you need ground.
Right, so
foundation.
I could look at it now and say that it was foundation, but what ended up happening is I ended up linking back to my roots, and the man that I married, he ended up being the pastor of the church that I grew up in. So my dad left.
Double stress.
I know.
Go ahead.
And so my dad left that church, moved, and the man that they called the pastor after my dad left, I would still go home to visit. That's who I ended up marrying.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I went from being a pastor's daughter to now a first lady. So now I'm an adult woman having to maintain a certain decorum and having to maintain a certain just oomph about her because of the name I carried, which was his name now. So again, if I would have known then what I know now, I just went from one struggle to another struggle.
Gotcha.
Because I already was struggling with the identity of being Tara, Dr. Bird's daughter, to now Tara, Bishop Cousin's wife. And keep in mind, I'm only 21 at this time. And so it's still just trying exactly the things that I was wanting to do at 21.
Right.
But again, just running from who I really am at my core. So anyway, again, just rushing the story along, all of this led up to
We're in
me.
Church, take your time. Like they say, take your time.
All of this really essentially led up to me just really not knowing who I was and having a complete identity crisis because that marriage didn't last.
Okay.
And once I lost that marriage, I lost the identity that came with that marriage.
Of who you are. Okay.
Exactly. And not only did I change who I was as a result of being married to a pastor, I became what I thought he wanted me to be, which is another thing. Women, if you're young, in a marriage, thinking about getting married, you cannot lose who you are caught up in a man, because if anything happens, you're going to look in the mirror and not even recognize yourself anymore. I didn't know who this girl was because I had become so much of who he wanted me to be. And then he gone now, moved on with somebody else, and I'm left not understanding who I am.
Part of that, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things I'm trying my best, talk to my daughters, and to let them know, because that's another thing, when I say maturation process, it's also due to, again, my father. Parents, at that time, my dad was a great provider.
Right.
But he didn't know how to be that nurturer. And other than let's see what the Bible talks about.
Do you think that he's supposed to be that nurturer that you're looking for?
So I'm going to say this. I take different parts of what I grew up with, and I appreciate. So, for instance, like I said, when I said my dad, and again, I have 3 sisters. Okay. So from their perspective, and that's why when I say we have to learn to give grace. So again, we go back to, back that, in that time, it's kind of like, this is all what I got to be the provider. I got to do this. I got to do that. Right. And when you come with certain conversations that's uncomfortable, a lot of times, even with my dad, he'll be like, well, let's see what the Bible says. My thing was, I always shoot from the hip. I get what you're saying, but I want to know how you feel. At this moment, I need my dad. Because there's nothing better than life experiences. So even when my last podcast, when I was talking to my son, when you get older, you know the difference between right or wrong. My conversations be straight from the hip. And I want to be able to do that with my daughter, because here's the thing. I tell people all the time, a lot of my lady friends, here's the thing. The reason why women become very upset and very mental and very angry and very bitter, part of what you just said is because I become this person. Whatever he is, I become him, right? And it's not that. The truth of the matter is, women make so many concessions for men. Women make concessions for men. Think about it. We don't make concessions. This is pretty much who we are. So when I said, we look at women, when we date somebody, we accept you for who you are right now at this time. A lot of the issues is, a lot of women look at men and say, I see the potential in him. And I see what he can be. And I see glimpses of it. And I just want you to be that person. And do whatever he's going through. Because again, I'm learning. Right. A lot of young men, and this is something that part of the mental health that I'm learning. A lot of young men, because they only have one parent, that identity crisis, they don't even know who they are. That's a good point. So a lot of men come up and they provide, just like these rappers, they're a character. You understand what I'm saying? I'm being who my mama told me I should be, because my daddy wasn't here. So I'm going to be, my mama want to make sure that I'm going to be better than him. That's good, yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So you come along and he's just trying to figure it out. You thinking, again, if I do this, that, and then you're getting upset and you're so upset and you're like, I do this, I do that, and not understanding, he don't even know what the hell he wants or who he is as a person, as an individual. You understand what I'm saying? So, because again, back to what you're saying, it's like, now I got to take on this other, and then again, for you, it was familiar. It was familiar. It was easy. And you water yourself down and you say, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Think about it. You see married people. So you see the woman, I got to lose weight. My husband has a problem with my weight. But his fat ass, belly.
But that's why I say, not to cut you off, but it's important that I kind of stick a pin on what you're saying, because all of what you're saying is key and is vital for both men and women. Right. But the real part that a lot of us miss, that must happen before we get to a place where we realize everything that you just said, which is what I advocate as well, the self-acceptance that has to come into play before you start to realize these other factors that are making you into the man and woman that you are. Because there was nothing, I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with it, but as women, we're natural nurturers. We're naturally going to look at a man as, no disrespect, men, but as projects. I want to take care of him. I want to give him what he needs. I want to be the one to pour into him. But what we fail to do is talk to ourselves first and say, I can't give him what he needs. I can't pour into him. I can't speak to the places where he hurts if I have not first given myself what I need, spoken to myself, and healed myself to a place where I'm ready to give that to someone else. Because what ends up happening is we give, which is what happened to me, give so much of ourselves to an individual when they're not permanent.
Right.
And when they leave, it took a piece of me with it.
You feel loved.
It took so much of me that I didn't even want to be on this earth anymore. Women, if you ever let a man get you to a point where his absence makes you question whether or not you want to be on this earth, run. Run quickly. Not because he's doing anything wrong, because it's you. You're the problem. I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way, but that shows your lack of self-love that is going to be vital in your ability to love somebody else.
I appreciate that. You know, and it's so much easier coming from a woman. And another thing, you know, about our culture, what I dislike, one of the things that I didn't want to do when I was thinking about doing this podcast, for my integrity's the fine line. I don't want to do the woman wrong, man right, man right.
I love those conversations.
For me, I want to have a conversation if it's going to
be productive.
It's going to be productive, and we come and I'm under. And for me, a lot of people, women and men, when I watch on social media, they're not ready to receive the truth.
But that's the hurt talking. So you have a lot of people having conversations in that realm when you, like, let's say we're having a man versus women conversation.
Right.
If I have not healed properly, you become every man in my eyes. So the venom that I spit is not even about you anymore. It's about that hurt that's not healed, and you the same for women. The reason why I avoid those conversations, or if I do have them, I always preface it by saying, I ain't never been no man. So who am I to say how a man should act, how a man should talk, how a man
church.
I don't know, because I've never been in your shoes.
Right.
And that's why a lot of times when I listen to men speak on women, it just frustrates me, because it said, when have you walked a day as being a woman, no disrespect, but a black woman at that? And until you have done that, it's hard for me to even digest what a man has to say if he initially starts off his argument or his point with telling me about a woman.
Great. So now let's segue to getting deeper to what happened to you.
So, like I said, we ended up getting a divorce. The marriage wasn't horrible. What happened in the marriage is that neither one of us was ready for the spouse that we were. So I'm not saying that I wasn't ready to get married. I wasn't ready to get married to a man like him. I'm not saying he wasn't ready to get married, but he wasn't ready to get married to a woman like me. We just were not compatible in the sense of where we were in life. And here we are coming into holy matrimony, trying to build from that place, and it just wasn't working.
Okay.
And one of us was going to have to kind of bend for the other. And in marriage, that should be easy.
It should be.
A lot of marriage, a big chunk of marriage is sacrifice. And the price of sacrifice in both of our eyes was way too much. So we were like, I'm not about to become this man that she wants me to be. And I'm like, I'm not becoming this woman that he wants me to be. It ain't going to work. And now we cool once we realized that. But so anyway, so what happened was we ended up getting a divorce. And honestly, if I would have allowed us to get a divorce and move on, I probably would have been fine. It would have hurt. I would have had to go through some time of healing. But my Band-Aid was still operating as his wife even after the divorce happened. Because yes, I was happy that we had kind of got some closure.
Okay.
And we weren't married anymore. I didn't have to worry about certain the criteria of being a wife anymore. I didn't have to live and abide by that. However, because we had children together, there was a lifestyle that I wasn't really ready to let go, and he didn't force me to let go. So he traveled a lot. So when he would go away and travel, I would still remain at the house and just operate with our kids and life like everything was normal. So that can only go on for so long. He, as a single man, should be able to started another relationship.
And he is. And he did.
And he has every right to.
Right.
But I just was not ready. If you, and I know we talked about this earlier, if you've been through a divorce, whether or not you're happy about it, whether or not it bothers you, divorce is like a death. And at some point, point, you really mourn the ending of whatever. I can't speak for everybody else, but there's something that you are going to eventually mourn, because the process of divorce is very, very painful when you really do it the right way, meaning cut it all off. So you have at some point, you and this individual thought that you all wanted to spend your life together.
Listen.
So when the reality sets in that that's not going to happen, that's like a death. And
Listen.
I mourned that.
I take that as, I'm not going to get into my situation, but I'm going to say this. I make a joke about it. Remember, everybody watched Color Purple. Mm-hmm. So remember at that time when, City was reading the letter, mm-hmm. and she was like, so Paul ain't Paul? Like, for me, again, we both, grew up in a two-parent household. So for me, when I say marriage was very, very serious, when I decided to get married, I looked at it as to death do us part. Mm-hmm. Rich or poor, sickness and health. I was pretty much prepared for whatever, because I've seen in every instance of my parents' marriage. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? To go through. So for me, I knew, my dad told, one time I'm arguing and I came to my house and he was like, what you doing here? And I was like, man, he was like, man, take your ass home. You understand what I'm saying?
That's what he
like, said. Again, figure it out.
Yeah.
And when that happened for me, I didn't know what to do. Because it felt like two deaths. Mm. Because my mother had just passed away.
Oh, wow.
So my mother just had passed away. So I'm dealing with that. Mm. And then the person, and for my words, lack of a better term, I'm thinking that, bitch, I run through fire for it.
Yeah.
And you just basically said, nigga, I give up. Like, I'm out.
Exactly.
You're looking like, again, what the fuck do I do? Like,
that's
where
what
I come from?
Like, you could literally be praying for the day that the divorce is final, but when it literally happens,
right,
it's like a death. Like, it doesn't feel good. So when like I said, we got our divorce in 2010, but I actually didn't mourn my divorce and go through the motions of my divorce until 2012. Because that's when it actually started to be, we have to go our separate ways. Like, there's a new lady in his life, and it ain't me.
Right.
So, and he never disrespected me. I'm still the mother of his children. And as he always says, we built a life together. So I'm always going to respect you.
We're family. At the end of the day, we're family.
And that's what we call each other now. However, at that time, I just knew that I definitely was not a part of the equation anymore in terms of a life with him.
You had to
and I started to mourn that. So I've never been a super emotional person. Just never really, you'll never catch me like crying like that or anything. So when I started to really mourn my divorce, it didn't come out in the typical way where, I cried to my best friend, where I, pulled out my journal, where I went to any type of, grief classes or anything. I just held it in. And one day, I tell this story a lot. My kids spent a lot of time with him because Daddy's house was like Disney World. Mama was living in the projects at the time. Ain't nothing wrong with it, but kids liked having the TV in their room, the PlayStation, the big backyard with the swimming pool. So they stayed over his house a lot. So I remember one morning, kids weren't there. I typically, don't listen to the radio. I like silence. So it wasn't abnormal for it to be silent when I woke up, got ready for work, got in my car. I just hadn't talked to anybody that day. And my job required me to be on the phones. And we had a certain script or greeting that we had to say on the phone every morning. And all I know is I put my headset on, got ready to read my script. And I think the script was, "Good morning, Scheduling Center. This is Terra. How can I help you?" And all I know is I said, "Good morning." I just started screaming. Like, the minute I opened my mouth, I could not get that script out. It was just yelling and shaking and breathing and shaking to where people was like circling around me. It was like I was having a seizure. I just did not know what came over me, but I couldn't stop it.
Right.
It was as if my emotions said, no, we have to go somewhere. You have bottled us in, and we have to go somewhere.
Right.
And so, believe it or not, I still believe it was the Lord positioned a lady there. I had never seen this lady in my life, but apparently she was a high-ranking on the leadership team that just happened to be in our department that day. Mm-hmm. She knew exactly what to do. I don't know if she's ever been through it. I don't know if she was just familiar with a nervous breakdown, but she literally said everything that I needed to hear to at least get me to a point where people could talk to me and I could get to a calm place. But she told someone to take me to the hospital right away. They knew I was a veteran.
Right.
So there was a VA medical center close by. So that's where they took me.
Okay.
And, they give you like a whole questionnaire. And I believe that the question that got me admitted was I suicidal? And I always tell people I wasn't suicidal. I never wanted to take my life. What I wanted to do was take my kids, and nobody knew where we were. And in doing that, you can only go so far.
You don't know
no money,
what's
no. I don't know. I
right.
have no way to take care of them.
Like, nigga,
but I'm taking my kids, and we have exactly.
Yeah.
So in saying this, like, no, I'm not gonna kill myself. Yeah. But give me my kids, and we out of here. Where you going to? I don't know.
Right.
If we starve, we starve. But we gonna be together. So obviously that was enough for them to say, we gonna keep her here and don't let her around her kids.
Right.
So.
Okay. So got to admit it, because I'm gonna get deep.
Okay.
I know. So I'm gonna say this. Not gonna put it. I have a family member that we have done that. And at one point, I'm gonna say this. One day I was driving, and I had my daughter in the car, and I was driving, and I don't know, like you said, something just came over me, and I was just crying, and I just pulled over. So I pulled over, and I'm just sitting there crying, and police came and pulled behind me, and just like you just said, it had to, like, I'm gonna say it was God. Police came, tapped on the window. I'm still crying. I rolled the window down a little bit. He asked me, can I speak to you? He says, that's your daughter, and I'm crying. I'm not yet. So he said, can I at least speak to her? Rolled the window down, and he said, hey, sweetie, hey, how you doing? And, at first she didn't say anything, and he said, are you okay? And she said, my dad is just sad. And he says, okay, whatever. So, we took some, measures, called some people, they came. And then from that point, as a black man, I go from that because I'm feeling like weak, embarrassed in front of my daughter. And then I automatically kick in, and this is something that I want us to, just as a culture, as black men, to address. I got angry because I said, you put your daughter in a situation, because what if that police, because then this was the highlight of police killing black people. Man. So the only thing I could think was, what if this was not a good cop? What if he wasn't friendly? What if, again, I'm in a situation and he's scared, or he's, and I'm not in the right mindset.
He
and
I easily flip that narrative.
And I was so angry at myself. So when I had to go see, the therapist, I was scared, because I'm back and forth. Like, I was sweating, and I was going to leave like 3 times. And sat down, she just looked at me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at her, she looking at me, and she's like, it's up to you, how do you feel? And I just broke down again, and I just started talking. And she said to me, well, here's the thing. One of the things I can't say, this is kind of easy. I was like, easy. She says, because you are expressive and you can articulate your feelings. A lot of people I gotta pull, and a lot of, like I said, coming up, like I said, was for me, I was always honest about how I felt, who I was, even if it made people uncomfortable. My mom sometimes would be like, you talk too goddamn, like, I want you to tell the truth, but damn, like, right. I don't have a filter. So, because I want to be heard.
Yeah.
Because for me.
What's your sign?
I'm a Taurus.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, for me growing up, I had a big family. But I was shipped from different family members all the time. And for me, like, again, I got different perspectives. You know what I mean? And like I said, it was just different. And my thing, again, for us as black men, we don't get to, who do we call and cry? Your friends, you call your friend. Even if anybody, you can go to your mama, you can cry. I didn't know, like, up until now, I must say, my two best friends, like, I've learned, like, I can talk to them. But before, like, who the hell I can talk to? Like, I remember one time, going through whatever, and I had an uncle, I had just crashed my dad's, so it was my mom's car. And it literally was an accident. I already felt bad. And it was like, I remember him saying something to me like, you got to change your life. You got to get better. And I'm like, motherfucker, I'm not doing nothing wrong. Like, I'm going through something. Like, where is it where as a family member or uncle or father or, you know what I'm saying, just say, hey, talk to me, what's wrong? And for me, that's a little bit where I'm trying to change, for me to talk to my sons, my nephews. Like, I want to be able to see past instead of judging, because sometimes what I'm learning, our family, we forget. We forget we was there, or maybe close, or maybe we even did, things worse than that. So for me, at that point when you were in there, like, was it scary? And then from there, what steps did you do to get to the point where you are now today? You
know what's interesting? We so connected because you keep giving lead-ins to pretty much answer what you're asking me. But you know what's interesting? When I was in there, so they immediately, the lady that drove me there, she was already in communication with my mom. My parents were already living down here in South Florida. I was still in Ohio. So the lady was already in communication with my mother. And my mother, being the nurturing mother that she is, oh, is everything okay? She knew nothing about what was going on with me emotionally.
Right.
Is everything okay? Tara, what's going on? Da-da-da-da. So she was very, very much concerned. That night, I had the opportunity to talk to my father, a black man who only has daughters, and he did not know how to handle it. He literally came at me similar to the way that you're saying that your uncle kind of came at you.
Right.
I'm still his daughter, so it wasn't behind it, but it was, what are you doing? Right. What are you doing there?
Because for them, they're
and
scared.
He could not wrap his mind around,
scared,
what do you mean you had a nervous breakdown? But he said something that was literally life-changing for me that I still use to this day. And so I'm trying to explain to him how, I don't know, Daddy, I don't know how I got here.
It's nothing personal against you. You didn't do anything wrong.
But I needed him to be that way because he said, do you know where you come from? He started to share with me the history of my grandmother who experienced mental illness herself.
Listen, wow.
And my aunts who experienced mental illness themselves. But what they have gone through to overcome these things. And he said the same blood that goes through their veins, it's in you. And so he began to speak to me, not where I was, but where I'm supposed to be and where I'm going.
Okay.
He says, you're going to get through this. We got to start talking to you as if you're already getting through this. And that's really what helped me, because it also concerned me that I couldn't even identify where the problem was.
Right.
So I literally had to find out what is my issue in order to correct it. And I said, I don't even know what it is. So he said, well, that's what you need to be figuring out. What got you here?
Right.
And that's when I literally start replaying my life backwards to find out what decision caused what decision caused what decision caused what decision, until I got to the root. And the root was where we started this podcast, was my inability to really be who I wanted to be freely.
Right.
I've never freely just been able to be Terra, so I continue to become who I thought people wanted me to be. And that's what kind of was my wake up moment, and that's what has led me into becoming the woman that I am now.
Oh man, Tara, listen, I'm gonna say this. I really appreciate this. And talking to you, even myself, is scary because learning so much, and unfortunately, got to wrap it up and go over here to the Q&A.
Okay.
Gonna talk to the the Facebook clan. Again, hopefully we're gonna have a part 2 of this, because this is good. I'm gonna have a brother, another dude here, another sister here, and it's just one of them. We're gonna get deep.
Sounds good.
So again, I appreciate you, and we're gonna go from here. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this show, and I hope you got something out of it. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Yeah, so closing out again, man, I really appreciate my special guest, Terra Denise, with the mental health, especially coming from the perspective of, from a woman. I also would like to, again, thank everybody of, tuning in into our uncomfortable in-house conversations with me. I'm going to leave you again with one of my HB-isms. And that is, this time is, the moment that I need you to validate who I am is the moment when I am lost. Thank you guys, and you have a good night.